The Shepnaz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shepnaz Podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm your host today for
Worship Wednesday.
And this week, I got it out. Like, I didn't screw it up the way
I'm so
I
proud
did
of you.
last week. It was really awful. And then it was bad enough in my head when it happened, but then when I had to edit stuff afterwards, I was like, that was really bad.
It was something. It was something.
So if you missed that, go back to last Wednesday's episode and hear me trip all over the introduction. It was pretty funny.
Listen, you did it with pizzazz.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had
Much.
a lot of pizzazz that Pastor Nick Shaner will never find out because he doesn't pay attention to what we're doing here.
Yeah. He still never brought that up. He's a stinker.
That's all right.
Little stinker.
It's unfortunate.
But we did come to the conclusion that it's because he lives a life of pizzazz.
That is true.
He's got lots of pizzazz.
I think we had some comments, if I can find them. There was some answers. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we did the Would You Rathers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably not going to be able to find it now because I wasn't planning ahead.
Of course. It's all good.
But yeah, we had some responses to where the Would You Rathers.
Thanks.
I've also got a response to last week's podcast and says comments on Zach fully resonated with me on not liking the song Waymaker.
Nice.
To telling people not to come for the music, but for the word of God. Mm-hmm. Worship is about our listening and obedience, not about our entertainment. Mm-hmm. When we feel the worship service is about us, we have a great problem and need revival. Well,
Come on.
well said.
Amen.
And obviously you have been a regular listener because that's what we say here on Worship Wednesday.
Yepers.
Not those exact words. We're not that articulate. But that's what we got in our heads.
It's a very smart way of saying what we try to get out of our head.
All right. So speaking of smart ways of saying things, Zachary has been working on a lot of smart ways to say things recently.
Yes.
And so do tell what the topic is for today.
Today's topic is worship and leadership dynamics, balancing authority, humility, and teamwork in worship ministry.
Yay. That sounds so impressive, and I have no idea what that means. Worship and leadership dynamics.
Yes.
All right, so let's dissect that for a second. So
For sure.
the ins and outs of having both being worship and leading in worship. And we're going to talk about how we're balancing the different aspects of it.
Yes.
So what does that mean? Like, what does it mean trying to balance the authority, humility, and teamwork? Like, what are these factors that we have in play?
Yes. So for me, I think potentially one of the more difficult parts of what Noah and I and every other worship pastor out there does is reminding ourselves that we are working with people who are volunteering their time and talent.
Mm-hmm.
They are not, at least at our church, we do not pay our musicians and singers. I know there are churches out there that do, but we do not. It is a volunteer position. And I think one of the more difficult things is trying to navigate what it looks like when you have some inconsistencies or people are just not showing up for rehearsal or showing up super late or showing up unprepared. How do you navigate that? Because you can't fault them because they have busy lives. You know, they're working an 8-hour day, if not more, and then sometimes skipping dinner just to make it to rehearsal on time to come and give you their time and talent. Right. So for me, like that's one of the hardest things to address because I don't want to ever do it in a very like bossy, mean way, but those conversations still need to be had. So I think that's for me one of the hardest things, and definitely why I wanted to talk about this topic specifically. Again, because I can't fault people for it, right? I've been in that position where before I was a full-time ministry person, I would be working like I have one example specifically when I was still volunteering at Grove City. It was a Christmas Eve service, but I had to work at the restaurant. So I was working and I was supposed to get off earlier than I did, but we had a huge rush towards the end of the day. And I'm like, guys, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And they're like, well, you're leading a song, dude. Like you're
Right.
You're doing this. And I'm like, I know, but I don't know if I'm going to get there on time. So I literally had packed my guitar and a change of clothes in my car and drove all the way from Newark to Grove City with just enough time to literally throw on a clean shirt. I still had my dirty work pants and shoes on. Just threw on a clean shirt, threw on my guitar, didn't even have my in-ears in yet. They just gave me a wireless pack and I walked out on the stage and played the song. So I get it. Like life just happens and I can't quit my job so that I can come serve at church, right? You know, that I have to still support myself and now my family. So having those conversations in love and just saying, you know, hey, is this something where maybe you don't have as much time as you thought you did to serve in this ministry? Because like it's a time commitment. You know, we have a weeknight rehearsal and that's at least a couple hours. And then Sunday morning, you know, we're asking people to get here at 7:15 a.m. and they're not leaving until afternoon,
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
12 o'clock, most times later. So it's a big ask for us to do that for people. But at the same time, we also are making sure that, hey, when you come and be a part of this ministry, you know, we need to know that you're going to be here on time. We need to know that you're going to come prepared. We need to know if you can't, how can we help accommodate that? And I think that's the best way I've learned how to deal with this because I've had this conversation 10,000 times with people. It's, you know, listen, I ain't mad. I'm not here to like tell you I own your life. And like, that's the humility piece of it, right?
Right.
Because there are a lot of churches out there that are like, well, if you're in this ministry, like I own you, like your time is mine. That's not the case, right? That's not what we're here to do. But just having those conversations and walking people through like, listen, this is a huge time commitment. And if you can't give that amount of time, that's okay. We just need to know. And that way we can navigate better how often you want to serve. You know, like we have one person on our team and she's phenomenally talented, like super talented and worships so authentically. And she was serving a lot. And then she was still in school and was trying to graduate and like doing all these things. And she finally came to me and was like, listen, I love being here, but I don't have the bandwidth right now to do 2-3 times a month. So would it be okay if I just sang once a month? I'm like, of course. Like, we're not here to burn you out. We're not here to control your life. And I think that's another piece too. And I don't even know if this is so much humility, but just being intentional of knowing your people, is keeping an eye out for burnout in your team. Because one thing I've noticed is a lot of people, when they jump into church, it's like, oh, I got to be here all the time. I got to serve every week. I got to give you every free second I have. And then a few months pass and they're like, I got to quit because I can't do any of this anymore. I'm so tired. I'm so burnt out. And so just keeping an eye on your people, right, on your team and communicating with them often. Everybody on our team, just communicating as much as you can, just being like, hey, how you doing? You feeling okay? Are you tired? You know, how's work going? How's your family? How's your kids? And just being able to be in their lives so that you can say like, hey, I don't think you would come to me and say this. I think you're getting close to burnout. And I want to make sure that you don't get to that place. And so not that I don't want you here as much as you can be, but I also don't want this to be the thing that hurts
Send you over the edge.
Exactly, right? Like, yeah, I went to church and then they hurt me because I was here all the time. You know?
Yeah.
So just being really intentional in the leadership piece of it and knowing your people and knowing where they're at. So what do you got any comments on that?
Yeah, I think it's important as leaders to know that we're not, it's kind of easier for me just because my team's significantly smaller, but I'm also leading you spiritually. And so if that's not at the front of what we're doing, then I think we've missed our point of all this. Actually, Philippians chapter 2, 3 and 4 says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. And I think in the worship, if we can apply this to the worship leader role, I think it's so important that we are not in this to play fun music and to make us look good. And these great leaders who can have beautiful worship, I'm going to take you guys on a spiritual journey as well.
Yeah.
And I want you guys to dive into a deeper relationship with Christ. I think that's why it's so important to, when you gather, when you meet, and when you play, to also have a time of prayer, to share scripture, to read with each other, to also just catch up. Because what good is it, if your person shows up all the time throughout every week, but their marriage is in shambles, or they're going through addiction, or they're just hiding so much, but they're coming and getting their thing done. That's not leading. That's just checking stuff off every week. So really being able to intentionally be authoritative and know what's going on in your team's lives. I think that's super important.
Yep. And creating space for them to feel comfortable enough to share.
Yeah.
Like that was one thing that I really wanted to hone on, because there's been times in the past where there's times I felt like I couldn't share because I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to get looked down on, or like I'm not, well, if I share this thing I'm struggling with, they might not let me be on the team anymore. And I won't share his name, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but there was a gentleman on our team who at one point came to us and was just like, hey guys, I have a prayer or a God sighting, like a praise I want to share. I'm like, okay, cool. What's up? And he goes, I think I finally quit vaping. And I was like, oh, and like, there's not many times where your worship team comes to you and is like, hey, by the way, I've been vaping or smoking or whatever. But he was so comfortable in that moment and so proud of the accomplishment that he had made and wanted to give God praise for it. 'Cause he's like, I've been doing this for years and I couldn't quit. But he's like, I finally just had to give it up. Like I had to give it over to God. And he felt comfortable enough in that space that he wanted this team to know.
Yeah.
Like he knew that we weren't going to judge him. He knew that we weren't going to like, oh, you vaped. Oh, maybe you shouldn't be on the worship team. Like it was, I just want to share with my trusted community what God is doing in my life. And so creating that space and environment on your team, because we're all just a family, right? Like we're a family. So treat each other like family, love each other like family, and support each other like family. And so that was a really, really cool moment for me when he felt comfortable enough to just share that in front of the whole crew. I was just like, dang, dude, that's awesome. Like,
yeah. Well, and I also think when I look at leadership, it's something I have to remind myself to. As leaders, God may put a particular drive in you and a particular energy or a particular vision that he wants you to have, and he is, using his spirit to push you along in that way. I think as a leader, you have to, share that vision and kind of push your volunteers that direction. But at the same time, going back to what you're talking about with burnout, is that realizing not everybody has your calling.
Yeah.
And so because it's very easy to fall into, like, if I'm really passionate about this because this is what God has called me to, then I'm expecting other people to drop all their priorities and make this thing that I'm really driven about to be their top priority also. And there is a balancing act to realize that, God may have called me and it is giving me an intensity that I need to have as a leader, but I need to show grace to volunteers that are like, yeah, I'm not like here for all that. I just wanted to help,
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think it's important to realize that people are at different places, and just because maybe they don't want to be 100 what you are envisioning doesn't mean that they don't have value to add, and doesn't mean that they aren't doing what God wants them to do. God may just have this little piece for them, and I need you to do this, and they're being obedient to that. I mean, there's so many of our team members, both on worship and tech and in other teams here at the church, that they serve on multiple teams.
Yeah.
And so like they spread themselves out because there's need. So they might be 1 week, they might be on the tech team. 1 week, they might be on the security team. 1 week, they might be on the platform and as part of the worship team, or they might be watching kids. So I mean, like we know that there's only so far that an individual can go, and we're not trying to burn that person out. We want them to be able to pursue what it is that God has for them, and what God has for them individually may not be exactly what we as leaders have in mind for our particular ministry.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
So I do think that, that's something I have to remind myself. There was just a couple weeks ago, in fact, the impetus of my fumble last week when he said, "Oh, he's just tired." Somebody came up to me that was very nice in volunteering to help me out one time, and they stayed with me pretty late, and I could tell it was getting tiring for them, and I was just like, "Hey, I understand." I'm insane. Okay, so
Joe is not human.
I understand that, like, I should probably be going home right now, but like, I'm here. I'm going to do this. I can't help myself. And so I was trying to tell that person, like, look, I'm okay if I mean, I love having you here. But I'm not expecting you to. Like, I know you got to get up tomorrow morning. So do what you're comfortable with, and know that I appreciate whatever you're comfortable with. And when you feel like you need to go, it's okay. And just kind of giving that freedom and giving that, like, took the pressure off the situation. Because then it's not, am I going to have to stay here until this whole thing's done?
Right.
And it's like, no, whatever you're able to do, that's great. And if you feel like you need to go now, that's fine. If you feel like you got some more in you, whatever. But I don't want you to ever feel like you're not giving enough. Like, whatever you feel comfortable with. And so we have people on different rotations. Some people, I'm just wired like I want to serve. I don't even feel like I'm really at church unless I'm serving in some capacity. But that's just the way I am, and I know for some people they'll look at me or people like me and say, "Oh, you're destined for burnout," and like it's like, well, that might, if you were in my spot, that might be burnout for you. But that might not be burnout for me, because I know what God is doing in me, and I know like where my level is. I do have those limits, and I we joke about it. I am human, and like I know there are times when it's like, okay, I can't say yes to that, and I will. There is a line. I don't find it very often, but there is a line where at which point I say, okay, that I just can't get everything done. I can't be all that, and so, but I am very comfortable with what God is, what I am able to do, and I enjoy it. I don't begrudge it. I'm not coming in like, oh, here we go,
Right.
And so maybe you could speak a little bit to not just leaders of other ministries, how this might apply to them, but also maybe to volunteers and, what we hope for them as well.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, and maybe you can speak into this too, just having honest and open dialogue all the time, and not creating an environment where people feel like they can't be honest with you about where they're at. And one of the ways that I've done that is to do it with them. You know, I tell our team all the time, like we talked about it a couple weeks ago where I just had to come to the team and just be like, guys, I gotta be real with you. Like, I am struggling today. Like, I don't want to be here. It's not you guys. Trust me. I'm sorry if I'm grumpy with you, but it's got nothing to do with you. I just genuinely do not feel like I have it in me. And what I love in those moments is when people in the team, like there was one time in particular where I just come and I was just like, guys, I'm struggling. Here's what I'm struggling with. I don't even know how to pray tonight. Like, I'm struggling. And we created an environment enough where the team was like, okay, you don't got it. We got you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they came around and they were like, nope, you're sitting in a chair in the middle of the circle. We're going to pray for you tonight. So that was a huge way. And then now creating that open conversation where people feel comfortable with, like, I love, it kind of stinks sometimes, but at the same time, I love that our team is comfortable enough to just be like, bro, I just had a really bad day and I'm not coming tonight. Like, I ain't got it in me to be there at rehearsal tonight, or I'm feeling like crap, you know, which I would rather them do that than come and be miserable and not
spread it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, get everybody else sick. But then also it's like you're not coming with the right attitude. You're coming out of like an obligation, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I told him to be there, so I just have to be there. It's like, no, like if you're not feeling it, dude. And as a leader, being able to say like, okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll make it work either way. But then the flip side of that is when it becomes a habit or a cop out of like, bro, you haven't been to rehearsal for the last 4 times you've been scheduled, and then you're coming on Sunday not prepared or whatever it is. You know, using that level of authority, just say like, hey, I can't control your life, but if you are going to be on this team, like I need to know you're in. And so far you haven't shown me that you are. So if you don't have the time, that's fine, but I need you to tell me that, because it makes it more difficult when I'm putting you on the schedule. You tell me, yeah, I'll be there, and then you bail every week.
Yeah.
You know, that leaves us hanging. So it's okay if you don't have the time, but I need to know that you don't have the time so we can address that appropriately. Because then you just start making stuff up in your head.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, this person's lazy, or this person doesn't like me, or this person just wants drama. You know, it's like, no, their grandma died, their work life is hard, their kids are sick. You know, it's like there's a million things that could be. And without that open communication, it's like, just talk to me. Like, let's just talk. I'm not going to be mad at you. Again, I can't fire you. Like, it's not going to dock your pay. You know, like you're a volunteer. But just having the authority, when you have authority, you could either use it well or you can use it badly every time. And so to use it well is just to be able to speak life into people. And sometimes speaking life into people is like, yo, dude, I've noticed you're not around. Like you're backing away. You seem like you're having a hard time. Like, so what's really going on?
Yeah.
So again, you're not trying to force people to come play music for you. Like, you're still pastoring them. And it's like, I can tell something's wrong. And so let's address it in a way that helps you get closer to Jesus. Not in a way that just makes my ministry easier, or makes my life easier. It's like, no, I want you to just get closer to Jesus. So I see something's going on. How can we address it and help you get better?
All right, friends. You know, I think as we're wrapping it up, I think this applies not only in leadership as we're looking at worship leading, but also in our relationships with our brothers and sisters in Christ. There's sometimes that they need a hand up and you just say, hey, you've been sitting on the sideline too long. You need to get to work. And there's other times you're like, it's okay. Take a rest. It's okay. Yeah. In the meantime, you can go to shepnaz.org and see everything that's going on at the church, and also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For Pastor Zach and Noah, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.